Hey, Limit Breakers, how's it going? I had a little bit of a technical issue earlier on, so apologies for that. But today's topic, I wanted to talk about podcasts. Are you utilizing podcast for your business? Now, I asked this because 2 years ago, me and my business partner, Ick, created our first podcast together, which was called Live Your Truth. Now, Live Your Truth essentially was designed and created to bust the myths of personal development, the concepts and the missed theories and all the made up stuff that's been floating around for a number of years. So we really wanted to touch upon busting the personal development myths that so many people rave and do in their practice. Now, this isn't just to talk about what the podcast is about, but that podcast was created 2 years ago, and it's been coming up to about 6,000 downloads. I think it's not huge amounts. I mean, it's still a lot. I mean, nearly 6,000 people have been listening to it, which is amazing. But what I'm talking about is, are you utilizing it in a way that it drives more traffic to your website and creating more audience for you? Now, here's a missed trick that we did essentially. Well, is a strategy that I implemented towards the end of the podcast. We normally do an outro, right? The outro is normally you ask for feedback, you ask for subscribers, you ask for reviews, you ask for comments, you ask for a call to action. And I said for the people to listen to the podcast at the end of it to say, go to our website if you want to find more information. Now, I told them to go to the website, which is called findyourjourney.co.uk. Now, because earlier on this year, early on 2019, I changed web hosts, and I also got rid of the landing page that Find Your Journey was hosting on. And I completely forgot that there is still traffic, huge amounts of traffic going towards, or potentially going towards, that website. So over this whole year, we probably missed out about over 3,000 people or potential traffic that could have landed on that website, right? I'm not saying everyone goes onto the website after they listen to the podcast. Normally you finish the interview and you close it. But there is that potential that they could have. So normally on that landing page, it's a free training, and it's about 5 hours worth of free training and a upsell, or at least it goes towards potential working together in another training course or potential coaching, and how else we could help other people, right? So that's a big mistake that I kind of realized last night. I was just looking at some podcast traffic and stats for the Unspoken Truths of Digital Leadership, which is my other podcast. And then I was like, oh, let's have a look at Live Your Truth and see how that's doing. And I was looking at the stats. I was like, oh, wow, we're only getting, still getting between 200 to 250 downloads per month over the course of the whole 2 years. Well, over the course of the year, or at least since I've taken that site down. So I was like, I better fix that landing page. So now that landing page is fixed. So any potential traffic that does come along from that podcast, at least they do have somewhere to go. They do have the training, and they are able to find out more information about Live Your Truth and self-awareness training, rediscovering themselves, identifying their values, and all the good stuff that we did for leadership training, right? And so that's one way of utilizing podcasts, is have a great quality podcast series that you could use, and make sure you stay on top of it as well. I think that's or at least know what's happening with it. So that's a big mistake for me, and so that's a learning that I was like, well, better fix it. And I thought I implemented this strategy also with my unspoken truths of digital leadership. It goes towards my personal website. So I know for a fact that people have somewhere to go, and it is live, and it does have further on downloads and videos and podcasts and articles that they can read and interact with me as well if they need it, or if they want to join the Facebook group as well. And if you haven't joined my Facebook group yet, go and join it, because I am looking to grow it further, and I will be developing more strategies, more exclusive content for the group only. At the moment, I'm still broadcasting to both profile and group and YouTube. But once the group grows bigger, it's more engaging, people are looking for more help, I'll be making more exclusive content for group only. Just for people who, wants to learn more, wants to engage further, wants to develop a, deeper relationship, and those that want help, right? Those that want to change their lives, change their business, change their digital presence, have a digital transformation. That's what the group is going to be about more. Now, for podcasts, another way of utilizing your podcast, not just starting your own one. You don't have to start your own one, because it is time consuming, and you do have to do editing, and you do have to, arrange to get scheduled and published and all those. So if you don't know how, hire someone like myself or another expert that does know how to do it for you. But how else you can utilize podcasts is you can jump on other people's podcasts as guests. Similar to how you would go in radio or radio stations and have an interview with the radio host, talk about your subject, talk about your expertise, talk about your advice, talk about solutions that you have. Similar with podcasts, you can pitch yourself to, podcast hosts. If they have an audience that you're helping already, if you're in hospitality, then you could go on the hospitality podcast and see if you can help add more value to their audience, right? They're always looking for expertise to engage more, or add more value to their audience, some more content, more advice, more strategy. So that's another way of utilizing podcasts as well, is become the podcast expert. Not podcast expert, but become an expert on the podcast, so that you can reach more people, develop better relationships as well. Because a lot of the people who's creating or at least hosting these podcasts, they have the similar interest as you. If you're in hospitality and they're in hospitality, there's a reason why they're there, right? Add value to them, build relationships with them. Don't just use them as a means to add to your profile and say, look at me, I'm on another podcast. Like, no one cares if you're on a podcast or not, to be honest. Are you able to help them on the podcast? Are you able to provide the solution on their podcast? Are you able to provide something that they're going to find useful, that they can implement, that they can use, right? You could, all these things, like you've been featured and published in, but at the end of the day, does it really matter if you're not actually helping anyone? Like the metrics that we're measuring, especially in digital marketing, definitely measuring the wrong KPIs, wrong metrics. Like people are looking at the likes and the shares and the comments. It's like no one cares about any of those. Well, the people that think they know would care about those stats, but ultimately, for digital marketing, it's all about conversion. Do you convert your post? Do you convert your audience? Do they engage with you? Do they buy further? Do they work with you on a further relationship? Where does it take them? Right? It doesn't matter, how many likes and shares and views you get on a video, on a post. And that's the type of metrics you need to realize is, you're not measuring instead. There seems to be a huge, especially when people go, here's the reports for this month. I mean, it looks good on reports, right? On pie charts and analytics and all that stuff. But it means nothing if you're not converting and you're not generating the sale. You're not generating the next step. You're not helping someone else, right? That's the whole point of having a podcast and being an expert and being a guest expert. You provide value and provide a solution to help others. That's the best way of doing podcasts. The other way of utilizing podcasts is what I mentioned first, like live your truth. It's each episode has a premise, and each premise is something that you could use and implement into your life, right? Things like we talk about the myth of recharging your energy, and you got trusting the universe and being fearless, and negative self-talk is bad, and all of these kind of myths that we go around. But we teach a premise that you could use and implement straight away. Should you listen to and apply it into your life, and it works. That's what the premise is. It's something that's proven, it's tested, it could be scientifically proven even, and that's the best part of it. I think that's why it's doing so well still. Like, it's still ongoing without me promoting it. So have your own expert podcast to talk about your expertise, your subject. And those are the best ones I've got so far. But also, I think third one would be building new relationships with other hosts, other podcast creators, other content creators, and other subject experts who's interested in that field. I mean, I've developed a lot of new relationships and new contacts by having podcast hosts coming onto my podcast and talk about how they created their podcast community, their audience, how they lead that community, how they've built it as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as someone that just developed the show because they were interested in the subject, right? And so that's how I build my relationships. And I'm making, developing new contacts in different areas as well. And then, it reciprocates. I go on their show and I share my expertise with digital leadership, and how I can add more value to them, right? Whether it's in business, whether it's in relationships, whether it's leadership, whether it's self-awareness. There's so much more you could do with podcasts, and it's still underutilized. I mean, I think when Jason talked about it last night, and another guest that I had on an interview mentioned podcasts as being around for since 2002, 2004 or something. But it's only this last few years that it's really picked back up again. But it's nothing new. But it is very trendy right now, right? And it's still underutilized. There's still so much potential in podcasts. And even I'm still learning the game of podcasting and how else I could utilize this as part of my business strategy, as a branding strategy, as a brand positioning. It's still a great tool, and I enjoy having guests to talk to and have quality conversations. It feels a lot like my late chat shows that I've been building, that I've been having, but but it's more obviously tailored towards an expert subject matter about the unspoken truths of digital leadership. It's still like a subject that I want to stick that theme in Whereas the late chat show is more just a chat show. It's more generalized, right? It's casual. It's more conversational. I mean, my podcast is still conversational anyway. I think my interview style is very conversational. And I like to interject my own stories within their podcast interview as well, just to share my experience and build that relationship a bit further. Like if they make a point, like there's no point just letting them talk about that point and not comment on it or at least relate to it. Now I feel as an interviewer, as someone, I suppose for me anyway, as someone who's empathetic, I connect more when I can relate to that point. And I suppose that's one way I build more meaningful connections with individuals, is because I have a story that I could connect, I could relate to that point. And if I can't, then I would probably move on to a different question. But most of the time I can connect and understand where they're coming from when they have a point they make. And I think it's another great way to improve speaking as well. For me, especially as someone who's aspiring to be a public speaker, someone who wants to speak more on stage, so I could share my message to the wider world and audience. It's good practice for me to think on my feet, to articulate my communication skills and my style, and really understand how my voice could come across, whether it's online or whether it's offline. It's a good way to practice speaking. And also it builds confidence, like Facebook lives and YouTube lives and going streaming on Twitch and stuff on live. It gives me that confidence. It builds that self-confidence. And I do love the fact that it can help me grow so much as a speaker, as a communicator, as a trainer, as a coach, as someone who's aspiring to be a better version of myself. Like I've always had that fear with public speaking. I had the fear of standing out and being out there in the world. And so the more I could show myself online and on videos like this and create more content that's more useful and valuable to other people, it boosts my confidence to go out and do more for the world, more for my community, more for you, for those who listen and support my content and support my work. I get that. I get that confidence, and also get that belief that my work is it's either inspiring people, impacting people, or influencing people in a positive way, right? And that's always something that I've lived by, and I concentrate and focus on those three. And so a podcast just opens so many more doors as well for you as a business owner, someone as an expert, someone who just has a voice or a message to share. It's a great door opener for you. Should you tap into the right podcast, the right audience, you will be able to expand further with it. And I feel, anyway, it's still an underutilized tool. And I feel if you haven't already, try and get yourself onto someone's podcast, or maybe just have a go at yourself and just create your own podcast. I mean, it's so easy to record a podcast nowadays. This episode, right, could be changed into a podcast episode if I wanted to. All right, just compress it and change it into an MP3 file, cut and tail intro and outro towards it, upload it onto a podcast host, and you're pretty much done. Or obviously you need to do the submission and stuff for Apple iTunes and stuff, but it's not hard. And if you don't know how, get someone an expert like me or someone else that doesn't know how to work with these kind of things and create it, right? Don't waste your time wondering and go, what if, and trying to be perfect as well. There's no such thing as trying to be perfect. That's one thing that Ike and I did, was trying to be too perfect with Live Your Truth. We were like, do we know the subject enough? Are we good enough to teach or talk about this subject matter and things like that. And it's like, just stop worrying about it and share your truth. Like, speak your truth. That's what we call it. Live your truth. And even on my my new podcast, right? The Unspoken Truths. Speak it. Talk about it. See what happens afterwards. Worst case is no one's going to be listening to it. But at least you shared it and you got your message out there. So if you haven't got the idea already, look into podcasts. And I'll see you all in the next video tomorrow. Peace out.